Hi everyone, today I'm going to go through how to pass exam P and SRM. These are pretty difficult exams that I've taken and successfully passed. And today I'm just going to go over a couple tips, some of the main things and takeaways that I got from taking these exams that I want to share along. So the first thing in passing exam P is you want to get coaching actuaries. Coaching actuaries is an amazing platform that has many different uh, types of questions that you can take, different learning modules, practice quizzes. You can create your own custom quizzes, custom exams that you can take. And the difficulty will increase as you get more and more questions correctly. And the one thing I recommend for this exam, the number one most important thing you can do if you want to ensure to get a passing mark on exam P is to get to level 7 or 8 on adapt coaching actuaries by taking practice exams under exam level conditions. And the reason that this is the most important is by taking these practice exams under exam level conditions, you will familiarize yourself with the types of questions you will see on the actual exam. And this, I feel like, was the single most best tip that has helped me pass this exam. If I were to give one tip, that would be it. But there's a couple more that I want to share. Second is creating review sheets of formulas and things you want to keep in mind for the exam. So for me, those formulas and things I wanted to keep in mind were not just equations, but also patterns of thinking, how to solve certain questions, whether I want to solve questions using tree diagrams or Venn diagrams or just using probability equations, writing down certain examples that really resonate well with me and I can adjust them to other types of questions. Writing things for each section of coaching actuaries, for each section of the exam, whether it's general probability, multivariate, univariate, or the insurance questions, writing down formulas, certain things you want to keep in mind when you're tackling these types of questions. Those are the things that you want to write down. And then lastly, reviewing the questions you get wrong and practicing them again, figuring out why you got certain questions wrong in the first place, tracing that back to a flaw or a gap in your understanding, and sort of really building up your understanding from the ground up and figuring out why you got a question wrong, going back to the module if you didn't really understand it, and then redoing those questions that you got wrong is really important. But the one thing I keep on iterating is to get to level 7 or 8 on adapt, taking practice exams and coaching actuaries under exam conditions. If you can get this, then I assure you with around 90% confidence that you will be able to also pass exam P. Exam SRM is a little different in that exam P is more computationally intensive. It's also very time intensive. I realized that I had around 5 minutes per question. And one of the key strategies in P is to make sure that each question you go through, and if you can answer a question, you do that immediately. And if you know how to answer a question, you do it immediately. If you think it's going to take you a time, then you leave it towards the end. That was the strategy for P. For SRM, it's a bit more lenient. Time is not that big of an issue on this exam. And a lot of the reason is because a lot of the exam is focused on qualitative questions instead of quantitative, sort of the problem-based solving questions that you can see in P. For SRM, some of the main tips I would keep in mind is to also take not as many practice exams as you would for P, but to take around 3 practice exam on coaching actuaries to determine your EL or unearned level, to also take those custom exams. So you can also build custom exams on coaching actuaries. And the one technique I would emphasize here is to focus more on qualitative types of questions. This exam is very focused specifically on qualitative questions and really conceptual understanding about random forest, decision trees, time series, models, linear regression, logistic regression, conceptually bias variance trade-off. Understanding those concepts conceptually is more important to this exam, rather more so than doing some of the calculations. And even in coaching actuaries, one thing I learned is that a lot of the questions that you will see on coaching actuaries are a bit too computationally or a bit too intensive in terms of the calculations, and you will see slightly less difficult questions related to the quantitative types of questions on the actual exam. So focus more on qualitative exams as you're building out your own custom exams during coaching actuary. Also go over all of the SOA released SRM practice questions. I felt like those were a great practice resource where, especially the qualitative questions, and I felt like those were really similar to the types of questions that actually came up on the actual exam. Same thing in terms of creating a review sheet for the formulas and concepts you want to remember. You want to categorize information that you're learning. And the way I did that was by creating review sheets for every section of the material. So for decision trees, time series, linear regression or linear models, non-linear models, creating a review sheet for each, and certain things you want to keep in mind. And remember that you don't have to take a bunch of notes on this. You're not learning from the ground up. You're not learning from scratch. You're creating review sheets after you've gone through the material and after you've gone through some practice exams, and you're just writing down the things you need to keep in mind, the most important things within each section, and the ways of answering certain problems, patterns of thought, patterns that you're seeing, and types of questions and things to keep in mind for you. So it has to make sense for you. You're not giving this to someone else. So that's one of the things we also want to keep in mind when creating the review sheet. But the most important thing I would say in exam SRM is focusing on qualitative custom exams in coaching actuaries and doing a lot of those. For P, like I said, just get to level 7 or 8 on adapt, taking practice exams under exam-like conditions. Those two, I feel like, will put you in a great spot of passing P and SRM. Now I'm just going to go through some of my review sheets that I had made for P and SRM. Okay, so let me just. So now, as I said, I want to go over my own review sheets that I created that I thought were really helpful for me. Just again, these don't have to work for you. If you want to create your own method of studying, that's up to you, but I just want to share what had worked for me. So I created review sheets based off of sections. So these are my review sheets for P. So for example, for probability, I had Bayes theorem, some of the basic probability equations, tree diagrams. Like I labeled, okay, after we have probability of X, then we have A given X, then we have A and X. And then Bayes theorem, as I mentioned, tree diagrams, Venn diagrams, probability equations. Those in my mind were like, okay, these are the 3 ways of thinking, or the 3 solution methodologies I want to implement whenever solving a question. And then A or B includes A and B, like just some things that I just wanted to keep in mind, again, for me as I was going through the material and taking practice exams. Formulas on just unions of 3 or 4 different A, B, C, D, or A, B, C. And then some exam questions, practice exam questions that I had gotten wrong, or I wanted to make sure that I had a firm understanding of. Similarly, for topic 2, had a bunch of notes on how do I find expected value of X given some condition on X? What's the way of solving that problem? I had a bunch of formulas, obviously a bunch of distribution, discrete, Bernoulli, binomial, hypergeometric. Sometimes for hypergeometric, an example really helped. So I typically refer to like this example whenever I thought of hypergeometric, and you want to just establish examples that you can always refer to, think back about as you're going through the material, geometric, memoryless properties, negative binomial Poisson, the formulas for those, when to use those, continuous, uniform, exponential, gamma, log normal, normal, beta. And then for multinomial, a lot of the similar concepts, expected value, independence, law of total expectation, law of total variance. And these are, again, things that work for me. Covariance, a lot of these questions that I had saw in coaching actuaries, multinomial distributions. This example really helped me internalize that concept. Summation of random variables, linear combinations of random variables, order statistics, and all the formulas for order statistics as well. And then just some example problems. So you could also just add example problems that you think are important in understanding the material. And a lot of the questions, majority of the questions will be like integrated questions that test multiple concepts from a variety of different sections and topics. So it's very important that you sort of have a integrated, nuanced understanding of the material. Right, similarly for insurance, I have a similar structure where I have some practice exam problems. And okay, what do we do when we just have a policy limit, both a policy limit and a deductible? How do we find expected value of those? Some formulas on expected values for reimbursed, unreimbursed loss, and all those things. Again, for the materials that I thought that were important, the topics and concepts I thought were important that I needed to understand. Similarly for SRM, simple linear regression, some formulas for those. A lot of the quantitative questions can be just done by knowing the formula for like R squared or error sum of squares or regression sum of squares. And I had a lot of these assumptions, violations, all of these different, I'll put a link of these review sheets that I had made down below. But a lot of what this comes down to is knowing the concepts that you think are important and putting them on your review sheet that you think will be the most high yield in preparation for your exam. So a lot of my time was just reviewing these sheets, trying to memorize the formulas and concepts, and then taking the practice exams. Those two things I felt like were the most helpful in passing P and SRM. So I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.